she is just another evidence that DEI doesn't work.
Can't say that on CNN. They'll get very upset if you mention offensive facts. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another short form video breaking down media craziness. This time we're checking back in with CNN and a clip that's popping off right now from Jake Tapper's show where a Democratic strategist did not take it well when Stephen Miller's wife, Katie Miller, made a comment about DEI and Biden's former press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, that had the unfortunate simultaneous dichotomy of being both true and apparently offensive. Let's take a look at this clip and I'll give you my thoughts as we go along. And of course, the context here is that Karine Jean-Pierre is out hawking a book about how she's an independent and doing a press tour. So people are reflecting on her time as Biden's top press secretary.
What's your reaction to the book? I don't know if you've read it or read the reviews, but it must be just like popcorn for Republicans.
I saw her interview this morning in the New Yorker, if it came out today or yesterday. But what I think you're seeing and what Karen is attesting to is that she is quite incompetent to do the job, right? This is what Republicans have been saying for years now.
Well, and just to pause there on the New Yorker interview, she gave this interview with the New Yorker that they published the transcript, and it's just totally unhinged. She comes off as totally incoherent and all over the place. So that's what's being referenced here. For
years now, is that she is just another evidence that DEI doesn't work, whether that's in the White House in your press secretary role, or whether that's an air traffic controller, an air pilot, whether that's your doctor. You want to hire the best for the role, not just based on skin color. Jake, why did she get the job over John Kirby?
Well, why are we assuming that she, as a black LGBT, gay woman, is DEI, but a white woman who is behind the podium right now, which DEI initially started as affirmative action, which was about affirmatively hiring women and minorities? Why is one DEI and the other is not?
Why did she get the job over John Kirby? Because as everyone has said this week, she is woefully incompetent.
She had the job long before John Kirby.
I will just say she used to be a commentator on CNN, then she was one on MSNBC. Mm-hmm. And she was good at that. I'm without getting into the job I thought she did as press secretary. I thought it didn't seem crazy to me because she was eloquent as a commentator.
Why is she trained every 4 sentences to say she is a black, queer, LGBTQ woman? Because that's how she's been promoted her entire career.
Anyway, Katie Miller and Karen Finney, thank you so much.
Quick, cut to commercial. You're not allowed to say that. No, I don't know. Maybe there was a actual commercial break and they just were transitioning as normal there, but that was kind of funny to watch. Do pop off in the comments. Let me know what y'all thought of that clip we just watched. Do like, subscribe, and all of that. And now we got to get into my thoughts here because there's a lot. It is just objectively obvious that DEI considerations played a significant role in the selection of Karine Jean-Pierre as White House press secretary after Jen Psaki stepped down. How do we know this? Well, one, because she repeatedly talked about at the podium her historic nature as the first LGBTQ black woman or whatever to be White House press secretary. And two, because the Biden administration said over and over and over again in their official policy memos, in their executive orders, and their public statements and speeches, that diversity, equity, and inclusion was a primary concern for them. They didn't imply it. They stated it over and over and over again. And what they said about things like Biden selecting his vice president, I'm only going to pick a woman and I'm strongly leaning towards a black woman. Picking his Supreme Court nominee, saying I'm only going to pick a black woman, disqualifying most of the judicial nominees he could select because they're either white or not black or female or not female. And we know they did do this, but then there's this backlash. Anytime somebody dares suggest somebody is a DEI hire, they're called racist. This clip was shared, and Katie Miller, who, listen, I don't know much about her, but I'm not a fan of Stephen Miller, but she was called racist by lots of major progressive accounts online for saying this, and it's just obviously true. And you just can't scream racism at something we all know to be true. And in fact, if DEI was so irrelevant, right? If this had nothing to do with it, why is it that Karine Jean-Pierre constantly keeps bringing up her identity in every interview she does and talking about all her boxes she checks off on the census? Listen to this.
Karine, do you have any regrets at all for anything that you said while you were speaking on behalf of this administration?
Look.
It's a simple yes or no.
No, because you're asking for a yes or no question. I want to put some context to it too. I woke up every day. I woke up every day very proud to be the White House press secretary. I woke up every day as a Black woman who is queer, who no one had ever seen someone like me at that podium standing behind that lectern.
But yeah, if you think identity had anything to do with her being selected, you're crazy. You're a racist, evil, meanie, bigot. No, it's obvious. And people are not going to be cowed anymore into not saying obvious facts because they might hurt some people's feelings. And what this Democratic strategist says, the other panelist, about why isn't it DEI that they put this unqualified person now, talking about Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary under Trump. Well, one, the most obvious answer is because Trump doesn't do DEI. At least not in the same way or in this kind of context. So he specifically repudiated DEI and he did not pick her because you could argue she's unqualified or she's bad at the job, but you can't argue that she was picked because of DEI, because I'm not aware of any of Trump saying, I'm going to pick a woman for my press secretary or anything like that. And he specifically said, we're going to get rid of DEI. Whereas Biden says, yes, we're putting DEI at the heart of everything that we do. So yeah, that's why it's not DEI. You could criticize Caroline Leavitt. You could say she's bad at her job. She also was qualified. She had been the press secretary for Trump's campaign for many years. I mean, she had done this kind of work before. So I don't think she was unqualified, but you could criticize her all you want. But to say she's DEI just doesn't make sense. And it's a very lame attempted defense or deflection here. And the other thing that Katie Miller brings up, and she's right to bring it up, is that John Kirby, who also served in a press role in the Biden White House, is much more respected than Karine Jean-Pierre ever was. Even her own inside colleagues in the Biden administration have trashed her and said she was a disaster, said she was constantly causing them headaches and they had to coddle her and all sorts of stuff. John Kirby, who is a straight white male, he was much more respected by people in the press. He, I think, did a better job up there, and he could have been made White House press secretary, but he wasn't. And I don't think you're crazy or racist to suggest that diversity concerns or not wanting to pass over a queer Black woman, that I don't think you're crazy if you think that might have played a role, or that you would say that it would. And I think we're touching on a bigger problem here, which is I am concerned, especially online, and with in the increasing platforms and notoriety of some really noxious figures, the Nick Fuenteses of the world, that we are seeing a resurgence in racism and actual hatred and animus. But a part of the reason that is happening is because they have thrown this accusation around and watered it down and overused it and cried wolf so many times. And when you do that, when you try to label observing facts as racist, that gives cover to actually racist people pushing hateful ideas and sentiments, because then people aren't as put off by that label being attached to something because, we hear that all the time, so maybe it's not really that bad. They have very much created an atmosphere for a resurgence in actual racism, at least online. And I think that is a terrible thing to do, especially if you think or you say what you really care about is diversity and equity and inclusion. Does it feel like any of this is making society more inclusive and tolerant and open? I don't think so. I think the kind of DEI-obsessed politics of the Biden administration, where they were explicitly selecting people for roles on the basis of their immutable characteristics, I think that is divisive. I think that pushes people against each other and creates conflict and tension. And then there's something audacious and infuriating and frankly radicalizing about them doing that than calling us racist when we later say that they did that. That's insane. Like if you say that Kamala Harris was a DEI hire or that Ketanji Brown Jackson, the Supreme Court justice, was a DEI hire, progressives will jump on your throat and call you racist for saying that. But Biden literally in both cases explicitly conditioned their selections on their diversity characteristics. So they're simultaneously doing it, then telling you that you can't say that they did it, or you're a racist and a bigot. That is going to push people in far away from you and into the arms of some actually bigoted people, or at least become more comfortable with those kind of sentiments. And I think that's an absolute disgrace. But kudos to Katie Miller. I don't know much about her. Like I said, not a Stephen Miller fan, but I thought she raised some good points and didn't back down and dropped a little bit of a truth bomb on CNN on this one clip. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Make sure subscribed if you aren't yet. Do hit the like button and consider becoming a channel member to unlock weekly member exclusive videos. I'll be dropping a video with my mom this weekend where she answers the questions for her, mostly about me, that you guys sent in, but that'll only be for members. So please do consider becoming one. And with that, guys, we'll talk again real soon.